Good morning and welcome to today's meeting. I would like to officially open the meeting at 9:31 a.m. and I would like to acknowledge you are hosting this meeting on the traditional lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation. We acknowledge the Aboriginal people as the traditional custodians of Western Australia, pay respects to elders past and present, and the ongoing connection between people, land, waters and community. This meeting will be run in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 under the Planning and Development Panels Regulation 2011. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed on the DAP website in accordance with Regulation 42A of the Planning and Development DAP Regulations 2011. Panel members may refer to technical devices throughout the meeting to assist them with consideration of the information before them. Our members for today's panel are Part B, City of Nedlands, Councillor Fergus Bennett online, Councillor Kerry Smythe to my furthest left, Member John Syme to my left, Deputy Presiding Member Eugene Coltas, and my name is Francesca Lafanti, Presiding Member. We have one apology for today's meeting at this item, and that is Councillor Rebecca Coglan. There are no members on leave of absence for this item, and there are the minutes for this DAP meeting available on the website. Members, can I have a show of hands that you've duly considered all matters before you contained in the documentation received for Part B of the agenda? That is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest? Yes, Councillor Kerry Smythe.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Mine is the standard Standing Order Council declaration. The RAR was presented to the City of Nedlands Ordinary Council meeting on the 10th of December 2024. And I undertake to exercise independent judgment in relation to any JDAP which I will consider on its plan. I'm confident to participate in the JDAP meeting impartially without any prior commitment or bias, and I will consider any application entirely on its merits as presented to the JDAP.
Thank you for that disclosure. That disclosure has been duly considered. Approval is granted for full participation in this item, and that includes voting on the item. We now move to Member Fergus Bennett.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, I wish to make the same declaration. I was also in the same meeting, and I'll consider the proposal on its merits and make a decision impartially. Thank you.
Thank you. Member Fergus Bennett has provided his interest. Approval is granted. Full participation in this item includes voting on the item. Members, are there any other interest disclosures? There are no further interest disclosures. We will now move through to item 3.1, lot 345, number 90 Stirling Highway at Nedlands, for commercial development. We have a number of presentations, and members all those presenters are reminded that in accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024, clause 482, presentations are limited to 3 minutes, and there's been no extensions of time granted in relation to these matters. Accordingly, presenters are encouraged to focus on the main aspects. The material that you have provided to the DAP members has already been considered, and the DAP members have indicated they've reviewed all material provided. We have with us JDAP or DAP Secretariat, and they will be assisting me with the timeframes for your presentations. We'll be dealing with the presentations in the order I have appearing here, which is those in support of the application will appear first, and then those against the application will be appearing after. We will move first to Mr. Ken Perry. After each presenter, there'll be an opportunity for panel members only to ask questions of the presenter. And at this juncture, it's just questions to the presenter until we move into the discussion and debate on the item. Moving over to yourself, Mr. Ken Perry.
Thank you very much, presiding member. Thank you for my 3 minutes. I want to talk today about the recommendation of Nedlands to defer a decision on Aldi for 100 days. There's been a lot of talk about stripping power away from councils because councils, according to the minister, are not good. But there's no evidence that councils actually get planning decisions wrong. We still use a jury system because one of my judge mates said, they get it right most of the time. Our planning system now mirrors a judge-only trial, and that, of course, depends on the judge. The DAP system, for example, has approved Chillingworth, about $40 million of developer bonuses transferred from the community to the developer. And I keep mentioning Chillingworth because 2 of the members here today, government-appointed members here today, were actually on that panel that approved the Chillingworth decision 3-2. The other member, government-appointed member here today, is CEO, last time I looked, of his own development consultancy. There are lots more projects in Chillingworth. Another favourite of mine is the southeast corner of the Carrot Shopping Centre, which our Stirling friends would be familiar with. Suburban homes fronting a development of 18 and 24 stories, again approved 3-2. The Stirling Council was totally ignored again. The wealth transfer to the developers was enormous and probably exceeded the Chillingworth theft. In November, the government passed an amendment bill to the Local Government Act, and totally hidden in the amendment bill on page 492, it specifies that council cannot be involved in DAP project decisions. Well, that's what it reads like to me, yet to be tested. My mates who are in the political game say that everyone is shrieking to them on their door knocks as development is a major concern, but what they're really bemoaning is the threat to their property rights. And you are to blame for the loss of integrity of the planning system which we see today. As Greta Thunberg would have said, shame on you. Councils represent their community, and the planning system is the right way to manage changes to individual property rights, not the unjustified so-called exercise of discretion we hear so often. You members can all expect individually much more in the spotlight in 2025, and I will do everything I can to make you personally responsible for your decisions. I had high hopes that the recently announced changes to the DAP system would partly address the problems that exist. But in fact, as we see in front of us today, there are no changes at all. The more things change, the more they stay the same. I plead with you, heed the council views and restore integrity of our planning system through restoring the checks and balances that always existed. I came inside the 3 minutes. It's been good for me.
Thank you. Members,
questions? I presume not.
Members, are there any questions to this presenter? Not at this juncture. Thank you. We will now move on to our second presentation, Mr. Max Hipkins.
Thank you for the opportunity to address the panel. I accept my submission as read. In summary, it supports the RAR that there is inadequate traffic and parking analysis to demonstrate that the proposed plans are workable. In particular, the rear laneway on the applicant's southern boundary appears grossly undersized, sufficient to ensure refusal of the application. Stirling Highway is a high-volume primary regional road. It is inevitable that there will be a central median to prevent right turns into Florence Road from disrupting the flow of traffic. Deprived of this manoeuvre, all traffic accessing the Aldi site from the north and west will have to traverse the Dalkeith Road Stirling Highway intersection and enter via the access way from Dalkeith Road. This access way is designed with parking bays directly off it. It would have to accommodate parking and through vehicles, pedestrians visiting both Aldi and Woolworths, and shoppers who live nearby leaving with trolleys full of food. It is proposed to be only 6.1 metres wide, within an easement that remains within the ownership of the applicant. I argue that this is likely to constrain future growth of the Stirling Centre. The accessibility of the accessway should be publicly owned within a road reserve at least 10 metres wide, which should be managed and upgraded if required for the benefit of the overall centre. Traffic management is a serious concern for residents in Florence Road and Stanley Street. Various proposals for road closures have been suggested and investigated by the city's Captain Stirling Committee. Preferred closures are illustrated on the structure plan contained in my original submission. What would happen if the Nedlands Council succumbs to resident pressures and closes one or more of the roads illustrated? Aldi could not say they hadn't been warned. Finally, do we really want the situation of two major traffic generators, Aldi and Woolworths, with a road between them, repeating the Morley debacle? The applicant should not be permitted to proceed with these plans without justifying that they are workable.
Mr. Hipkins, that is the 3-minute time frame. Could you please wrap up your verbal presentation?
I have one sentence further.
Thank you.
Irrespective of the results of this analysis, the accessway along the southern boundary of the Aldi site should be in a public road reserve with a minimum width of 10 metres to remove the likely constraint and allow flexibility for future growth of the Stirling Centre.
Thank you for your presentation. Members, are there any questions to this presenter? Yes, we move to Member Fergus Bennett.
Thank you, Presiding Member. Yes, a question for Mr. Hipkins. Can you briefly describe the road closures that you alluded to, and specifically, would a road closure on Florence be what you envisaged?
Yes, this was illustrated in the original submission, which included a structure plan showing the closure of Florence Road at the rear boundary of the Aldi site, and also a closure of Stanley Street at the rear southern boundary of the Woolworths site.
Okay, thank you. And how does that solve the problem if those roads are closed?
Well, it takes pressure off the accessway and allows it to be used as a source of ingress and egress for both Aldi and Woolworths.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Members, are there any further questions to this presenter? Thank you. We now move forward to our next presenter, Mr. Tim Dawkins.
With your permission, would we be able to combine our presentations together, because we're not exactly 3 minutes each, just have 9 minutes for all three?
Yes, you can, and we will have the minute being commencing, so you'll have to sort of follow on commencing straight as a 9-minute. But thank you. So all three of you are here. Great, thank you. And so we have Tim Dawkins, we have Nigel, and how's it pronounced? Is it Uren? So as it's written. Thank you. And Jacob Martin. Great, thank you. Over to yourself.
Thanks very much, Presiding Member and members. This is a long enduring proposal. As many of you remember, we did have approval for an Aldi store in 2018. That's now lapsed, and we have come up with a new plan. The thing that's changed is really the Woolworths development that's occurred on the road. We now know what's happening there, so we've actually bolted in our plan to what they've had approved, although they sort of did the same thing with our approval. The approvals are kind of almost identical, except the relationship is different. Except what Mr. Hipkins said about the lane. Mr. Hipkins designed that solution to Darkeith Road. And if that happens, we would certainly support that, but that requires a significant expenditure by the City of Nedlands to connect up over the sump. We had a turntable in the laneway previously, which was approved and supported by Mr. Hipkins and previously. We've taken that out now, so it just creates a future connection for the lane, and Woolworths will have the exact same arrangement. So our lane arrangement is identical to what's been approved for the Woolworths lane between Stanley. If I can just progress that. I'm not going to dwell too much on it because what we really want to get to is the draft conditions, or the recommended conditions. But essentially, this is an Aldi store which is supported by 6 specialty tenancies. It's been designed with hand in glove with the city. It's gone through a long process, and it's now got all greens from the design review, which is pretty much unheard of, and we're really proud of that. The development will basically create a pocket park and create amenity for everyone and connect across the road for the City of Stirling. The reasons for deferral are really sitting with main roads, and essentially they're obstructions of the process by not providing any information before the City of Nedlands had their opportunity to review it at their council meeting, and now looking at providing some additional information at 4 o'clock yesterday, which is kind of also surveying the process. So we want to get to those considerations, and also happy to take any questions we have because there is a lot of information relating to this. So what I thought I might quickly do is just quickly go through the photos. There are 4 reasons for deferral. 2 of them relate to main roads not responding. Obviously, they now have responded and have supported the proposal with some conditions which we're not comfortable with. There's a condition about the car parking numbers, which we can talk to in detail, but we have sufficient car parking. We've got more than an Audi would normally have, and Nigel and Jacob can talk to that. And the final reason for deferral was to do with the native planting of trees, which was raised at the council meeting, which we're 100% supportive of, and we have no issue with that. So I'll just flick through some photos of this while Nigel actually talks a little bit about the site.
Yes, well, I won't go over the previous history. Obviously, Aldi have owned this site for an extensive period of time. We remain committed to the proposal. We've revised a proposal that's now got full endorsement from the design review panel. Speaking to parking capacity, obviously, we have extensive empirical evidence about what our parking demand is. That is validated through over 50 store network. We have all the parking data. It's not in our interest to provide under parking for this facility. We have actually overparked the facility based on empirical evidence. So I'll leave the commentary at that. The rear laneway, obviously, the proposal is for a future rear laneway that we have offered to provide an easement to the council should they choose to connect Florence and Dalkeith. That laneway doesn't exist and won't exist until there is a formal legal connection between the 2 streets. We've obviously offered to provide the future capacity to connect them via the easement. So just to clarify that that's the purpose of a laneway being provided in an easement, because it's not in a road reserve. It doesn't exist. There's no formal or legal connection.
The condition actually asks for a deed to agree to a future easement, because we don't want the easement creating public access to the back of our store where it's a road to nowhere. Regarding traffic and impact assessments, obviously the council themselves, the administration, have not raised any concerns regarding traffic and road network or local road network. Therefore, I would suggest that we don't need to speak any further regarding that, given the council administration are satisfied with the proposal. Jacob?
So we've done extensive rerouting effects as part of that traffic assessment. We've looked at the parking supply. We've done that from a first principles basis and using extensive information provided by Aldi. We've looked at truck movements into and out of the site. I guess that's one of the key points around main roads response is probably a pretty unworkable condition to require lane correct outbound movements for heavy vehicles. This isn't normal. You wouldn't expect a truck to turn left into the left turn lane as someone was coming through in the median lane of a 4-lane dual carriageway. It's just not a safe maneuver no matter how you do it. So we would always anticipate trucks taking both lanes for outbound movements, irrespective of the inbound. beyond that, I'm here to answer any questions you have about traffic and parking. Oh, yes, and it reflecting on the current Woolworths or the recent Woolworths approval, that same movement in the same location is also predicated on taking 2 lanes for the outbound movement onto Stirling Highway. So this is consistent.
We only got this information at 4 o'clock yesterday, so we haven't attended the document which we were prepared, showing their manoeuvre, which is their trucks leaving Florence Road, not in a lane correct manner. So that's already happening. That's an existing condition. They've signed a contract and they've got a building permit. They're underway.
And it's consistent with, standard traffic practice.
So what I'd like to do now is work through the conditions of approval, if that's okay. I sent in a memo. I'm not sure how we'll deal with the 4 o'clock stuff in Main Road yesterday, but I'm happy to also talk about that because that brings some new information. But the first condition which we do take issue with is condition 6, which is we're just requesting the modification to remove the words demolition. That's obvious because the site is denuded of anything, and it's just a matter of getting approval. So we've removed it. Condition 7, we requested deletion. There is no retaining walls. There's no walls on boundary, and there's no piling on our site. The condition's been replicated to the Woolworths approval, which has a full basement all the way up to the entire perimeter of their site, basically. So we don't do any of those sorts of things, and a dilapidation report is obviously a requirement of the National Construction Code, but for the type of construction we're proposing with no earthworks other than benching and battering, it's not a reasonable condition. Happy to talk to that further. Condition 9, there's a request from the City of Nedlands for a deed of indemnity. Now, we took out all awnings within the City of Nedlands road reserves on the request of the City of Nedlands, so that is a condition that has no purpose because we wanted an awning over the street. City of Nedlands said, don't do that, we won't support that. And you can ask the officers about that as well. Condition 10, we request a modification. Simply just a bit more hygiene in the approval to sort of say the condition is that the approval is well documented and supported by the design review panel. So we're saying that only departures from the existing scheduled modification of materials should be subject to any satisfaction of the City of Netherlands because they are in effect approved by this approval. It goes without saying, we just would like to have those words in there. Condition 15 requests a loading and servicing delivery management plan. We provided the Audi delivery and loading procedures as part of the application. That fully documents how that will occur. So we think that that condition should be reworded to simply reflect that document that exists and it has been referred to and assessed, rather than preparing a new document which talks about things that are new information. Moving forward, condition 22. 22 asks for noise management plan. The acoustic report confirms that this store can operate 24/7 from a loading perspective and an operational perspective. And the only thing that needs to occur is that a fence gets constructed to 3 metres for a portion of it, which is shown in the noise report, to a density of 12 kilograms per metre squared. Therefore, we suggest that condition is already reflected in condition 21 and will have to occur. Therefore, condition 22 is not needed and is unnecessary because the noise report already does that processes. 25, request modification simply because it talks about adhering to the sustainability report for the life of development. Obviously, we'll implement it on before occupation, but sustainability is a moving feast. We think with the permission of a few more minutes.
You will need to wrap up, but I will accept a slight extension. I do want to hear the rest of the questions you're raising in relation to this matter, or the rest of the comments on this particular issue, which is the condition or the alternate conditions which you're referring to.
Yes, thank you. So 25 is written there. We've requested the removing that just to allow us to continue to operate and adapt as the world moves on and technology improves. Condition 26, we request deletion. Main roads, and this is quite a significant one. They've asked for the land to be seeded free of cost. Pleasingly, this panel was in place, I guess, from yourself, Eugene, for the Woolworths development and the reconsideration for the Woolworths road reserve, where they actually had that condition requirement removed. They had to give up a 1 metre strip free of cost because it had curb implications, traffic implications. Our roads already had a piece of land taken away, and we're 2 metres further back than Woolworths sits at the moment. So we'll already be a metre less than a bit less than Woolworths will be seeding free of cost. And the rest of the land Woolworths was just left to be retained and seeded at a point, acquired by Main Roads when they need it. So we're suggesting that at the moment that condition is not necessary at all, because the metropolitan region scheme is a very powerful thing and it has powers and it's doing its job. It doesn't need to have this condition there. And we certainly shouldn't be giving this land free of cost, and that was clearly accepted. 27, request deletion in terms of the request to restrict undertake works to restrict right turn movements on Florence Road. That's approved in the Woolworths plan. That's a requirement of Woolworths. When Audi was approved previously, it created 273 peak vehicle movements. The Captain Stirling shopping centre at that time was 230, so we're adding a negligible amount. It's the 600 odd additional traffic movements that Woolworths are bringing that brought that requirement on. So the actual traffic from this store isn't actually impacting the need for that manoeuvre. It's right turns in and out of Florence, has always been the case, and were approved previously as by the Audi on the standalone. It's the Woolworths that have triggered that, and they're required to build it. So we don't think that condition 26 is fair enough, or 27 is fair enough, because it's not us bringing that on. Happy to talk about in any particular detail. 29. The application shall be amalgamated. This is a Main Roads condition which conflicts with condition 4 of the city, as we won't be amalgamating this lot. We may do, but it's a legal agreement can be in place to have the lot amalgamated, and that's done very commonly at the moment. We did it recently for Bruno, for instance, where we have 2 different lots, a pub operating across 2 different lot service and everything. As long as there's a legal agreement in place, there's no actual building requirement or any other requirement to amalgamate lots. Condition 31, we're just suggesting that this is about this is a fundamental condition, because I didn't get through all my lovely slides here, but what we're showing is the pocket park on the corner, and Main Roads don't want any of that. And part of this proposal is providing this here, and there's a few encroachments into the future road reserve, which are providing amenity for the community. So we think those things are needed and should be supported in that space. We will obviously accept a condition that will have us required to remove them. We suggest within 90 days of Main Roads actually buying the land off us. But for them not to go there at all is really a bad outcome for the city and for the residents of Nedlands, and Main Roads would just like to see it mulched or something. You've seen probably what's happened on Airlie Street, where they've got those trees in soak wells and because Main Roads designed it. We want to design it ourselves, and we think this is a far better outcome. What this is also saying is that the awning should not be encroaching into the site. So we're saying that the awning that exists over the street into Main Roads road, which only comes in 1.2 from the future property boundary, well away from the curb. We estimate about 4 metres from the future curb, and the awning that will provide amenity and visual effect and all those things in the street should be allowed to remain. It's not going to be independent from Main Road, and we think it's important that stays. And then we've added a part B to say that in the event that they do acquire the land, we have to take away all those things at our cost, which we're happy to do, except for the awning. Condition 32. The redundant infrastructure in the primary road is to be reserved. We're not really sure what that means. If there's something in there in the road reserve, which is infrastructure we're not aware of, but we're just saying there needs to be a time frame associated with any hygiene of conditions. There should be a time frame associated with it. We're saying prior to occupation, the redundant infrastructure be removed, but we're saying the redundant infrastructure should relate to the development. Because if there's something in there that the Main Roads put in there years ago, we don't think we should be the one that have to deal with it. But happy to discuss that further. Getting to the end, condition 34. All signs must be placed within private property and must not overhang or encroach within the primary regional road reserve. All signs are within private property. It's our land. We're not ceding it, and we'll be taking them away at some point in time. So for them sitting within the primary regional road reserve is completely acceptable. And if we have to remove them, then they buy the land off, we'll do that. Getting into advice notes, I don't know if you're interested in advice notes. Sometimes staff don't like to talk about them, but advice note D, we're removing the word demolition as well, because there will be no demolition, so there's no demolition management plan. And then finally, one which is a bit of a doozy, condition H, they've tried to, Main Roads have tried to limit or maybe this is Sydney Netlands actually, limit the access to the loading dock to a period of time, which is an advice note which is not enforceable and not suggested by our noise report. So we're a little confused as to why it'd be put in as advice note. We don't think it's required, and the And if it would be a condition, it shouldn't be applied because the noise report confirms this operates 24/7. That brings us into the submission material. We do have the information provided by Main Roads, which came at 4 o'clock yesterday. They've slotted in a few extra conditions, and I'm not sure if the members have had a chance to review them because we were scrambling to do so ourselves. But the one is that condition 3, they've suggested that prior to applying to a building permit, the application must demonstrate that a 15.6 metre vehicle and it can work lane correct to Stirling Highway. We're taking the exact same manoeuvres as Woolworths. We can manoeuvre into the site in a lane correct manner, but moving out is not going to happen and doesn't happen by Woolworths. So it's not suggested by that. So we're suggesting that condition is not required and should be deleted. Condition 6, which is a new one, maximum vehicle of heavy vehicle is 15.6 metres. We're happy to accept that. Audi own all their trucks. They salaried employees of the drivers. They don't use Linfox or third-party deliveries. Only Audi deliveries can come. They're having to buy new trucks for this site, and they'll be buying trucks that are 15.6 metres, so we can accept that. And then condition 10, prior to the issue of building permit, the applicant must submit a revised landscape plan showing how the temporary things will not be located in the road if we don't accept and don't think that's a good outcome for Nedlands. Have I missed anything? No. So happy to take any questions on all of that. I know there's a lot there. It's a bit disappointing because we're really happy and pleased with the fantastic development. There's just a couple of hygiene conditions we'd like to.
Thank you. Members, I have allowed the additional time in order to hear the full comments applicants' comments in relation to a number of matters. I'm now moving over to panel members. Are there questions at this juncture to the applicant? Yes, I move to Councillor Fergus Bennett.
Thank you, presiding member. I've heard mention that it's intended to have deliveries 24/7. In the rare occasion where deliveries in the middle of the night actually unexpectedly become a problem to the residential properties directly south, just on the other side of a wall, isn't a noise management plan actually a good idea, just so that there's a formal process between residents raising concerns about noise in the middle of the night and Audi actually accommodating those concerns?
Yep, Audi, thank you for the question. Audi have nearly 600 stores across Australia, about 60, 70 in Perth, and I've done a number of them. Most of them are 24/7, and that's why we have the delivery procedures, which was included in the thing, because there already is a process for that. As I said, there's one delivery a day. This might need to sometimes have 2 because it's a smaller truck than normal, but it's a salaried delivery driver. They get out of the truck, they go and turn off their refrigeration, they back it up the dock, and they do all the work themselves. So it's not like you have Sweps, Inghams, the Berry guy, whatever. You don't have a whole bunch of delivery people. So there's 1, maybe 2 deliveries a day. And they will be there into the dock, they back it in, they know the store, and they can actually be enforceable, because I live not so far away from a 24 IGA. I can tell you no one adheres to any sort of management plan, and there's lots of complaints. Audi have to, because they're the way they operate, their delivery drivers are employees of the store.
I think just to clarify on the question as well as to our opposition to a noise management plan, we've outlined fully and in a lot of detail what our delivery and loading procedures are, including the acoustic attenuation proposals, which relate to the operation of the proposed dock. Therefore, it's already been assessed and determined. We have, in effect, provided the noise management plan already in the application. Therefore, we're not sure what additional information a noise management plan would actually broker. We have already provided all the information.
And the regs apply, no matter what, it's law. We can't make more noise than this. If we are making more noise, that's not a Plan Development Act issue, that's an Environmental Protection Regulations issue, and we'll have to stop.
Yeah, just a follow on from that, a noise management plan may also include waste collection or the transference of waste from one container to another that might be particularly noisy. there's several other aspects to a noise management plan other than just the delivery truck arriving. So on that, when do you expect the waste collection to occur for this?
Well, as detailed in condition 19, there is a waste management plan that's been proposed and submitted and assessed as part of this application. So that's fully detailed and documented in that plan.
Yes, and I'm just asking, will waste be collected throughout the night, similar to deliveries potentially happening throughout the night?
The conditions of the waste management plan propose restrictions. The timeframes, I think, are in accordance with the EPA guidelines.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Yes, councillor.
Thank you. I've got 4 questions.
Yes.
The first one's about the amalgamation of the lots, and you've asked for it when it's condition 4 of the main roads. You've asked for it to be completed, but in the original conditions, you said where there was condition 4, you've said there's no issue with it.
Correct.
So are you saying there's no issue with the amalgamations, or are you objecting to the main roads condition because you thought it was redundant because it already existed, or are you disagreeing with the amalgamation?
We're not sure whether to do amalgamation. There's tax, land tax, rates, issues, all sorts of things with amalgamation, and often people don't know how to do it. So the condition 4 says, prior to occupation, the land to be legally amalgamated or alternatively enter into agreement to show that they. So basically, Audi creates an agreement with themselves against each of those lots that they can't be sold independently. So what the amalgamation is worried about is if Audi sells a lot with portion of a building on it, it becomes a problem. So the legal agreement basically prevents that from happening and creates a situation where they're amalgamated in legal sense, because you could sell the lots individually, but then they couldn't transact on it. So it's giving an option. It's either amalgamate or do a legal agreement between the lots so they don't need to be amalgamated.
But just to clarify, the requirement to amalgamate is only a building permit and a development approval technicality. It's nothing to do with planning assessment.
Nowadays, it's unusual to see that condition.
Yeah, but at this late stage, as you said, with the main roads condition coming in, it's sort of unclear. It's a bit circular as to what
we like condition 4
deleted and what you've got an issue with.
Well, condition 4 gives an option of amalgamation or a legal agreement. The main road suggestion is purely amalgamation, and we don't know why main roads are getting involved in those sorts of things. It's not their room.
Thanks. I'll ask the staff about that.
Thank you. Would you like to continue with your questions?
Yes. Now, it's pocket park issue. You've given a good reasons about the value of having a pocket park for the community, and it seems obvious that was designed to be, when you look at the where the trees are and everything, it's in the sacrificial piece of land that was obviously going to go for either for left turn pockets or whatever. Main roads are saying, well, don't have it. Why are you objecting to that when perhaps the pocket park should have been in a more appropriate position? It's a terrible place to sit right on the edge of the highway anyway. It's not a good design outcome.
Well, I partially disagree with that, because one of my favourite places to sit is in front of the Captain Stirling Hotel when it's still open. That was right down there against the Stirling Highway. It's a lovely little spot. You can actually be up there and screened away. What the road reserve isn't the road carriageway. The road reserve is where people walk, where trees grow, where all sorts of things happen. And the main roads plan, which was included in their submission, they're not widening the road. They're not putting an extra lane or a turnpike or anything. They're just widening the reserve. So the reserve gets wider to accommodate things like footpaths, like pocket parks, like trees. So all of these things, apart from the signage, would be just handed over to main roads and as part of an ordinary list of things that exist within a road reserve. If you think about boundary to boundary, there's all sorts of things that occur within that space. It's not just a carriageway, and so we hope and we expect that all stays. We're not designing this to be taken away by a road widening or anything like that. We want that to endure.
might just add a few further comments. The Pocket Park was added by Aldi at the request of the design review panel. So it's actually as a result of design review that we've added the Pocket Park and we've agreed with their suggestion. The Stirling Highway currently has no funding for any further duplication widening. It's not even in their program budget. The suggestion from Main Roads is we don't do anything in that, so you'd end up with a no man's land of nothing in front of the development if you accept that condition. We're offering to provide the amenity and we will remove it at our cost if and when any road widening constitutes any removal of what we've installed. That's what we're offering.
And that'd be condition 31 as proposed by us would require that.
Okay, thank you. Next question about the parking or discussion about what number of car parks are required. In that discussion, there's comment that a lot of people will come and park at Woolworths to come to Aldi anyway. That there was a benefit gained there. So to what can you sort of elaborate on that, given that you also said that there's no requirement for you to contribute because to the traffic movement there, because you've got the same numbers nearly as what IGA had previously. So on one hand, you're saying there is a cross benefit with Woolworths, but on the other hand, you don't want to contribute to that benefit.
It works both ways. So some of the Audi customers will park at Woolworths, some of the Woolworths customers will park at Audi.
But just to clarify, the median requirement to install a median to prevent right turns into Florence, that is already a condition of the Woolworths approval. What Main Roads have now asked is for the same condition. So they're asking for two proponents to do the same works. That's the issue we have there with the roadworks. So
not to share the cost, but
not if they're asking for both to do exactly the same work. What Tim was explaining was that the Woolworths was the trigger for the requirement for blocking the right turn into Florence. And that wasn't triggered as a requirement by Aldi, but now Main Road have asked both proponents to undertake the same works, even though it's already a condition of Woolworths who've already got approval. Hence why it's a little bit preposterous to suggest two people undertake the same works.
And if they didn't progress, it wouldn't be needed.
Okay. And my fourth question about public transport use that's discussed in some of your reports. From your experience with Aldi stores, the 500 stores, do people actually come to Aldi's by public transport of the nature of the public transport along Stirling Highway, which is very linear? But won't your catchment be a lot more circular? So how much public transport use can you claim?
We'd anticipate that for customers, that number might be fairly low, although there is more happening in that precinct than just the Aldi. So there would be people who arrive and do multiple different things all at once. I guess it's included to make sure that we have connection to public transport, and that is included part of the compensation, but it's not included as a discount to any of the trip generation or parking generation. So it's sort of like a yes and discussion to say, if everyone drove, we could still park them on site and the roads could still maintain, safe access. But if people were going to use public transport, it's available.
The example we gave in the memo was Quinana, which is only gave that example because it was the audit was done this year by Jacob, and that has 90 car bays, and at best I think they're using about 50, and that has zero public transport. It's the same size store. It's opposite the Woolworths that exists in the shopping centre there, so it's actually a really comparable thing. So no, people don't often do a grocery shop by public transport, but we welcome.
To clarify, the parking data that we provided is based on active parking data. So in other words, people physically parking at an Aldi store, it's based on that data. So that would assume if someone hasn't driven, then they've got public transport or they've walked.
Okay, thank you. That's all.
Thank you. Are there any further questions at this junction? Yes, Johnson.
Probably to Jacob. In the scenario where there were not a Woolworths store and Aldi was developed, what would be the requirements at Florence Road, that intersection?
So I guess in the absence of that redevelopment, the Aldi store almost exactly replicates, in terms of trip generation, the previous IGA. It would not by itself trigger anything because it's basically just a functional upgrade. So, you know, insofar as there would be some delays for the right turn, but it wouldn't, you know, that trigger, that nexus wouldn't exist.
So no change.
No change.
Could I just go an extension on that specific question? Can you clarify that that comment relates to all type of vehicle, light and service vehicle?
Yes, and what I would say is, as an extension to that, the IGA is more likely to have more vehicle movements per day than the LD will, because the loading service delivery arrangement is different. So the actual
Could you explain? Explain that, please.
Because of the way Aldi runs their stores with all deliveries with owned vehicles, has salary with salaried personnel, you don't have that large number of distributed service movements throughout the day, which is something you'd see for an IGA.
So you're saying that, if I repeat back to you, that because Aldi has control through its arrangements of employed staff, that it can manage in a more controlled way the operations that relate in all aspects to the site, particularly in relation to servicing. I'm not talking about customers.
Yes, agreed.
Unusually, the requirement for a 15.6 metre vehicle condition on the approval is only binding upon Audi and the development side. A 19 metre vehicle is an as-of-right vehicle that can travel on any road in the metropolitan area. So it is actually kind of, if our IGA was always allowed to have a 19 metre vehicle turn into that site and utilise the site. It's only we're agreeing to a low amount to agree to assist the process.
Thank you. Any further questions?
Yes, in regard to Woolworths, is that proceeding? Has that started or?
I saw something on LinkedIn saying Atlas, who's the old BGC, have signed the contract and away they go. So yeah, it looks like it is.
Following on from the question before, that if Woolworths delays and the median and I think the seagull treatment that Main Road is requesting, you don't think that's required?
No, and it wasn't required on this near identical approval for this Audi store. The first time around was supported by Main Roads and the city through the DAP, with no modifications to the Stirling Highway.
Yeah,
and also a 19 metre vehicle.
Thank you. Any further questions?
so just going back to the awning. You're saying that if it's required to be removed later, you'll enter into an agreement to remove it, or you're saying you don't?
Everything except the awning.
Yes.
Yeah. Everything except the awning is
not practical to remove an awning when it's been installed and it's integral to the building design. So we've suggested we will remove everything but the awning. That is the one item we're suggesting remains, because it needs to. Otherwise, it would have to be designed out. And it's miles away from the.
Yeah. And I guess to follow on from that, the critical dimension for an awning into the road reserve is the distance between the awning face and the curb face, and not the amount that it protrudes into the road reserve itself.
And do you require Main Road's approval to construct the awning in the reservation?
Well, it's our land, and it's approved. This approval would be granting that permit to do so.
Thank you.
Are there any further questions at this juncture from panel members? Thank you. If not, thank you. We will now move to officers. Morning, officers. I think we have Chantel, is it? Yes. Thank you. Bruce Thompson. Thank you. Just the two? Have Dylan down here as well. No, he's not coming. Okay, thank you. Over to yourselves, officers. Would you like to provide any comments in relation to the proposal and or response to any of the additional material that's been provided, and any comments from the presenters, including the applicant?
Authority report at this point in time thoughts to a deferral.
The reason for that was the lack of.
I can't hear.
Sorry,
Yeah,
you
have
could
to
speak up a little bit louder,
Sorry.
please.
Is there a microphone?
No, there's no microphone as such in the room. Not for us. It's online though. They can increase the sound.
Sorry, mighty member, I'll speak a bit louder. So, the responsible authorities report at the moment recommends a deferral. The reason mainly for that was at the time the city was not to Department of Health. There was also further advice from the Major Roads Department only received yesterday. At this point in time, the city hasn't had due period of time to fully consider that advice. Nevertheless, we understand that the city is broadly supportive of Alder's or the community broadly supports it. The issues will be mainly about addressing the traffic issues.
Thank you. Is there anything further you wish to make comment on?
I suppose if we are looking at conditions, the city has some comments about in response to the applicant's requests. But I think
Thank you. Members, are there any questions to city officers? Yes, we're moving to Councillor Fergus Bennett.
Thank you, presiding member. Just in relation to the conditions of approval, it looks like the proposal is a good proposal and is broadly supported, as we've heard. As a decision maker, I'm concerned about the conditions of approval because often the devil's in the detail. And we've received information just recently from Main Roads with a huge list of conditions. There was an existing huge list of conditions from the city. The proponent has suggested removing or modifying a large number of that big list of conditions. As a decision maker, I find it a bit unnerving that the details in the conditions are in flux, and I don't really think the council itself as a decision maker has seen whatever the conditions are in its entirety, and the community probably hasn't seen the conditions, what they're proposed to be in its entirety. And so my question is, isn't there quite a lot of uncertainty about what these conditions should be, and there's possibly unintended consequences if we rush to approve something with conditions that have just been formulated on the day, basically on the day of approval? So can you comment on that for me, please?
Yes, ultimately we agree with that, hence why we have recommended this for deferral, especially with the Main Roads conditions, and that they've come through yesterday with amendments that we haven't actually had the chance to fully look at and analyse and discuss with Main Roads. So we would like the chance to do that, hence why we're recommending deferral, especially ones about the seeding of the land. Obviously that was very contentious for Woolworths as well, and we do think that it would be beneficial to have that chance to discuss with the and Main Roads and come up with conditions that everyone is kind of comfortable with. Yes, so hence why we've still would prefer to see this deferred to iron out those issues.
Thank you. Just on that, as I said, it looks like a good proposal. If it's just a matter of refining some conditions of approval, the deferral may not need to be 100 days. It may be a lot sooner. And and basically what I'm thinking is, if the city thinks that it can look over these conditions of approval to reach a point where everyone's satisfied, it may not need to take 100 days. It may be done within a matter of weeks or so. And so the concern about a long deferral time may actually not be warranted. So basically what I'm asking is it actually a possibility the city just needs a matter of weeks to figure out these conditions rather than a full 100 days?
In general, I would agree.
100 days, it's a period of up to 100 days. So yes, we could potentially get it done a lot quicker than that. It's more 100 days is just a buffer period, I suppose, to ensure that, especially over the Christmas break and it's being closed down and that sort of thing, we can't put an exact time frame on how long this might take.
That's for the council.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, we are moving to member councillor Kerry Smythe for further questions.
Yes, so I just want to reflect the 4 questions that I asked the finance. First one is about the amalgamation. There's been some discussion as to whether the Woolworths blocks were amalgamated or not. Can you just clarify, were they all amalgamated?
My understanding is yes, they have been amalgamated.
Yeah, okay. That's what's shown on some of the plans in this, that they're amalgamated. So the second question about the pocket park and the understanding of the design review panel, can you give any shining light onto whether the design review panel recommended a pocket park that they thought, without knowing that Main Roads would request it to be not there or to be removed, just as it appears to be? And what would you anticipate the design review panel would throw onto that?
I suppose the purpose of the design review panel is to comment on design only and the planning and the land ownership and that sort of thing. Yes, they recommend a pocket park and they were supportive of the pocket park as proposed. I suppose the idea is we weren't anticipating that condition to be recommended from Main Roads, that there should be nothing in reserve. It's a little bit unusual, especially when it's temporary, not temporary, but not solid structures.
I suppose the concern of the council would be if it turns out all 10 green signals on the design review panel's report, if they, as a result of these conditions, some of those are no longer green. Would you anticipate that in the deferral, if there was a deferral time, you'd be able to manage to keep all those green in the conditions?
I think you're correct in that if they weren't able to build the park, it might change the scoring, which then might also require some amendments to the plans potentially. I would hope that we could come to an agreeable solution with Main Roads first, so that both the greens can be kept and the park can be kept.
Okay, thanks. And so the parking numbers and the use of the Woolworths double counting, you might say, of Woolworths. Have you got any concerns that you would like to highlight there?
Something that we've requested further information from the applicant, and we haven't necessarily resolved that as discussed in the RAR. Our technical services would require further justification before we're completely comfortable with the numbers proposed.
So would the deferral give you time to get that sorted?
Yeah, I believe so.
So going to the 4 points or 4 reasons for the deferral, from what you've heard today, is there any of those that you would delete, or was there anything you would add as another reason for the deferral?
I suppose the only one that didn't come from staff directly was point number 4. I think that actually is already covered off in the landscaping plan, so we could always, as a condition, nonetheless, all 4 items should be able to be resolved as a deferral.
So you stand by the deferral conditions and the reasons. And you don't need anything added to that, if anything further from what you've heard today.
No, I don't believe so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from panel members?
Yes, I have a question. In regard to the reasons for deferral, you're still unclear on the traffic aspects. In spite of the fact that the applicants have already demonstrated in their traffic impact statement and followed up comments that their stores don't require that level of parking. Bearing in mind that the panel often considers applications for warehouses that require 350 bays, and we regularly approve it at about 80 bays, depending on the nature of the business. And going back to Woolworths, did they provide every single bay that was required under their plan? Was there no discretion given to reduce the bays?
We're not necessarily asking Aldi to provide more bays. I think we're just currently not comfortable with the level of justification that they have provided.
Sorry, what did you just say then?
We're not necessarily asking for additional bays. We're not asking for them to meet our policy. We're just not comfortable with the justification that they've provided for it currently. We would like to see the TIA be more robust and cohesive so that we can actually stand by it and agree with it.
So what does robust and cohesive mean? In terms that I'm not really...
Sorry, I'll just add to that specific element. What's the additional information or data you're expecting in order to complete that further assessment?
Yeah, so there was a number of points provided by our technical services team. Sorry, I'm not the engineer. So it's talking about, it's as aligns with the historically approved car parking provision, and it's basically this, the justification that's provided is just that's what's been provided previously. It doesn't really talk about future needs, so hence why we would like further justification rather than just that's what's historically been approved. Is sort of.
I'll follow up on that.
Yes.
Any regulations or any sort of measures that might be applied to parking really are based on studies of other environments and so on. We've got here something which has got data provided by actual comparable things. What more would you expect the proponent to provide apart from that level of data, which seems to me to be fairly robust as it were? What additional data could they reasonably be expected to apply?
I suppose, again, I'm not a traffic engineer, but this is based on information by our traffic engineers at the city. They seem to have some disagreement with some of the things that are in the TIA that they have requested. Unfortunately, I'm probably out of my depth to comment more on that. I'm a planner.
I do have another question in regard to the 6.1 metre wide strip of land. Is that enunciated in the local planning strategy that it is 6.1? Where does the 6.1 come from?
I believe the 6.1 was just what was proposed by the applicant. We have no, at a staff level, we have no issue with the 6.1 proposed.
So there's no document that says it has to be 10 metres, and how you achieve that through compulsory acquisition or anything like that? Because that's the only way you could get it up, I would imagine, other than redesigning their application.
Yeah, no, there's no strategy or anything that says it has to be 10 metres. At a staff level, we're comfortable with the 6.1 proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I have a question, and I note your earlier comments about the late material. My question is separating those two aspects out. There's been an R13 request come through, which you've provided. Thank you very much. Some response to questions that were asked of you, particularly one of those was an alternate recommendation with a series of conditions. The applicant has provided a response on the material to the detail I've got in front of me was a response dated 17th of December. I'm assuming that you have received that response. It talks about a number of modification to conditions that were the subject of the R13, noting that some of the responses from the applicant talk to the main roads conditions as contained from its 11th of December response. So I'm parking the comments from main roads on the 18th of December and the applicant's questions or response to us today on the requested conditions from main roads referring to the 18th of December document. So I acknowledge that your comments that you've indicated you haven't had sufficient time to read those elements. So my question relates to the other aspects of the R13 that you've provided or that the city has provided to the DAP, to the members, and there are a number of comments that the applicant has provided in the preceding conditions. They are condition 6, 7, that they're seeking changes or deletions. 6, and I'm assuming you have that document of the dated the 7th or 17th, I beg your pardon, of December. Do you have, so my question in that context is, do you have any response you'd like to provide to us in relation to the applicant, I've already indicated the date, requested changes to a series of conditions, excluding those conditions that are referenced under the header, main road, which starts on condition 26. So have you got anything to say about the other conditions and the requested changes?
Through them from the start, first one. So the first one was condition 6. We support the requested change just to remove the words demolition. Fine. In relation to condition 7, we disagree. For a development of this scale, dilapidation reports are a standard requirement. We would, however, there's 3 properties which they've highlighted are vacant or some. We would be happy to remove those from the list. That's fine.
Sorry, which ones are those?
So that would be 56 Dalkeith, which is the sum.
56, 2 and 4. Okay.
Yes, so if you wanted to remove those, that we're happy with that. However, the condition in itself, we want to remain.
So on that one, can I clarify? You're saying from a city perspective, you're seeking condition 7 to retain, be modified, which would only therefore refer to lot 2, number 92, Stirling Highway, lot 88, Florence, lot 89, Florence, and lot 1, Stirling Highway. That's what you're actually saying.
Yes, yes.
Thank you. Sorry, continue.
Number 9, yes, we agree with that deletion. The audits have been removed from the road reserve, so that is not applicable. Number 10, we would also agree with modifying that. As the applicant highlighted, it's received all grades from our design review panel. So we are comfortable with the materials proposed. Number 15, we would prefer to see it kept. We acknowledge that they have provided a delivery and loading procedures. I suppose we would like some additional information in that as highlighted in those 3 points. As the applicant has said, they have already provided a lot of information about this, so we don't see it as an onerous condition to impose. So 15. Number 22, for the same reason, yes, they have provided a lot of information about that. However, a noise limit is more of a day-to-day. Again, they have provided a lot of information about that, so we don't see it as onerous to impose as well. Number 25, we're okay with that modification that requested. And then 26 onwards is the main roads conditions.
Thank you. I have no other comments. They have been already asked at this point. Is there any other questions, sorry, I should say, from panel members at this juncture to city officers? Yes, Member Kerry Smythe.
It's about the recent main roads advice and the left out at Florence. Is that what you were anticipating, and does that create some unexpected issues, or are you accepting of that?
Honestly, this is one of the reasons why we've seen requesting it to be deferred, is at the time of writing the RAR, we didn't have that advice. So it hasn't really been analysed. So we're not sure.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions at this juncture to city officers or panel members? Thank you, city officers. We now move back to the agenda. If there are no further questions from panel members at this juncture, we move to the recommendation. The recommendation is provided in the body of at the beginning of the agenda. That recommendation is for refusal. There is alternate for deferral, I beg your pardon. That recommendation at the beginning of the RAR is for deferral. There is an alternate for approval in accordance with the DAP standing orders. We will go first to the deferral, the recommendation in the RAR. Is there a mover of the RAR recommendation? It is moved for Councillor Fergus Bennett and it is seconded Councillor Kerry Smythe. Would the mover like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, presiding member. As I said, it seems like this proposal is broadly supported, and it looks like a good development. The problems, the devil in the details with the conditions. Now, if we were to make a decision whether approval or refusal today, it seems as though the advice that has gone into creating the RAR has arrived out of order in terms of the sequence. So for the responsible authority report to really properly consider this, the letter that arrived from Main Roads yesterday, and it was quite a detailed letter with quite a large set of conditions, and some of those conditions need quite a significant thought put towards them. Certainly not 24 hours worth of thought, and certainly not an hour's worth of thought in a DAP meeting. That letter from Main Roads, if it had arrived 90 days ago or 60 days ago, or probably even 30 days ago, the RAR could have properly considered it, and I think that we could have made a decision right now, and this meeting probably wouldn't have even lasted as long as it has. But as it stands, with Stirling Highway being a road under the control of Main Roads and a regionally significant road, they are a stakeholder which needs to be considered probably first in considering this development. And it seems like these conditions have been dropped in at the 11th hour, and it causes confusion and uncertainty about which conditions of approval are going to work as intended, which ones are no longer necessary, which ones are onerous. And indeed, perhaps additional conditions of approval might be required in response to the Main Roads letter. And so there's also uncertainty really around the traffic generation for this. I don't think that this will be an Aldi supermarket just like all the others. I believe that Aldi is not well represented in the western suburbs, and so it will become somewhat of a destination shopping area where a large catchment of people want to go to Aldi to take advantage of various deals and things like that. but my point is, I think that the number of customers that arrive by public transport is probably not as many as expected, and the distance that people will travel to come to this store is probably greater than expected. And so in a situation where Main Roads has limited access off the highway and it directs all of the traffic through residential streets, it may well end up with a circuit of heavy traffic driving quite a long way into the residential part of Nedlands. I can't actually elaborate on that one way or another, because as the officers have said, not a great deal has gone into analysing how the traffic actually services into this shopping centre. So as I said, with so many conditions of approval proposed by Main Roads, the correct procedure of these things is to actually let the responsible authority consider what Main Roads has said, and then this panel can make an informed decision based on expert advice. Otherwise, if we are chopping and changing conditions of approval on the fly, I think there's a large risk of unexpected impacts from those conditions of approval. And I don't think it's good planning it's planning on the fly to create conditions of approval on the day, especially when the RAR itself, the professionals who we look to for advice, they haven't had a chance to reflect on quite a substantial amount of information delivered just yesterday by Main Roads. So as I said, this deferral is for up to 100 days. I'm hopeful that the city literally just needs a chance to read the Main Roads document, and the deferral will not even be 100 days, probably significantly less. And then we can consider this development for how it will benefit the community and make an informed planning decision, instead of getting bogged down in chopping and changing a list of conditions on the fly. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, thank you. Look, I agree with everything that Councillor Bennett has said. The only responsible thing to do today, in my view, is to defer this so that these conditions can be worked through systematically and clearly to come to a good outcome. The whole time that I've been on council and heard the ongoing saga of this Captain Stirling area, and as referred to by former Mayor Hipkins, has been about the traffic circulation. And here we are at this final hour getting a detailed response from the Main Roads Department, which is only at the hierarchy of the Main Roads. It's actually not considering how that advice then impacts the local roads, the Florence, the Stanley, the Edward Street, the Bike Boulevard, etc. That needs to be looked at. The officers have said that they haven't considered that information. And for this whole area to be successful, it's going to depend on good traffic movement. And as Councillor Bennett said, there's undoubtedly a lot of attraction to the Aldi site from north of the highway, from areas as far as Laureate, Claremont, now Claremont. People will be coming to Aldi from that direction, and not enough consideration has been given that traffic's going to have to be fed down into Dalkeith, into the Dalkeith residential area, and back up around, and will have quite an impact. So if the traffic becomes too congested and too difficult to go, then people will abandon it. So I recommend that at this stage, to be successful, it needs to be sorted out now, and with the Main Roads advice, that can be done. that we've got that clear information, and a bit of time put into that over the next few weeks will be highly beneficial. So I recommend deferral. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers against? Are there any speakers, I should say, against the motion? John Syme?
Yes, look, I won't vote for a deferral. Very simply, I think there's sufficient information here for us to make a decision. Remind everybody that Main Roads is merely a stakeholder. It is not a planning agency. It is not a decision maker either. We have information from Main Roads. We have information from the component. We've got traffic modelling. I think there's ample information for us to make a decision one way or the other. So I won't be deferring.
Is there any other speakers on the motion?
So I'd like to speak against the motion. This application's been with the council for a long time. It's been given due consideration. If the council doesn't have the resources to assess it, then they should have probably got alternative backup from a traffic engineer, an independent traffic engineer. The applicants have provided the information. They've provided their reasons behind their site location and purchase. I don't think operators of businesses intend to locate somewhere to lose business, to create congestion. This area has been a long-standing mixed business activity centre. If the council hasn't already worked out that it will attract traffic to it and made provision for that traffic, then I think the council's been dragging its feet. This activity centre has been identified for many, many years. To stop consideration of this application to assess the whole activity centre, traffic generation, origin, destination. I think there are other Aldi stores outside of Nedlands, probably attract. I think there's one in Floreat somewhere up that way. So I don't think that deferring this application is warranted, certainly not for 100 days anyway. I would be considering that if it's going to be deferred, it'd be for a far lesser period than 100 days. So I'll be, and the reasons for deferral, Main Roads have responded. Main Roads have had a long time to deal with this application as well, and to drop things at the last minute. The conditions that they're asking for aren't too different to what we've had for a few days now. So I won't be supporting the deferral.
Thank you. I will speak on the motion. At this juncture, I am satisfied that the material that we have, and that includes the material from Main Roads. Main Roads has provided material in 2 documents, one dated the 11th of December, one dated the 18th of December. The material has some variations in the 18th of December, but a number of the matters that are covered off in this 11th of December documentation from Main Roads as a response has been provided. We have had that now for a period of time. I do acknowledge the comments provided by the city. However, I'm satisfied that the material we have before us, including the detail contained within the RA comments from Main Roads in those 2 documents I've referred to, as well as the material provided by both city officers in the R13 request and from the applicant, are sufficient in which to make a determination on this proposal, and therefore I do not support the deferral at this juncture. I move back to the mover for right of reply and close of debate.
Thank you, presiding member. Just to reflect on, Main Roads is not simply just a stakeholder. They seem to have some sort of overriding authority, which is evident by the fact that they are able to refuse crossovers onto Stirling Highway. So as simply as a stakeholder, they actually do have legal powers to impact how this planning proposal actually unfolds, and where the crossovers go is actually a critical aspect of planning any kind of development, because it affects the circulation and how people arrive and leave from it. And so Main Roads is not simply just a stakeholder, and their letter needs to be considered as actually quite serious advice from a state government agency, not simply a letter from a stakeholder. Secondly, I actually object to the insinuation that council, it was mentioned several times by a panel member that council should have been aware of what was happening, and council had plenty of opportunity to respond to this latest development application. This development application was made aware to the council about 10 days ago. There was a previous approved development application, but this is a different development application. And the council, the elected representatives of the City of Nedlands, they only found out about this 10 days ago. It was put a late item onto the agenda. So the council itself never really had a chance to look at the conditions of approval. Main Roads has provided advice yesterday with a number of contentious conditions of approval. The community hasn't had a chance to really consider any of this, and I think it's risky decision making as a decision making body for approvals, to make an approval when the actual conditions of approval have not been properly written in a full list for both the community to consider, for the council to consider. Most importantly, the responsible authority hasn't had a chance to consider. And here, a development assessment panel is considering drafting and modifying multiple conditions of approval that the RAR will never have a chance to provide advice on, the council will never have a chance to provide advice on, and the community will never have a chance to even have any engagement in. The previous presenter, Mr. Perry, can sometimes say inflammatory things, but in this case, he's actually right. The community, the council, and the RAR now are actually being circumvented out of their role. The RAR should be the authority that writes conditions of approval and considers the long-term impacts of them. It's not something that should be made up on the spot. And I'll just leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you for your right of reply. Debate has closed. We are now going to the vote on the motion for deferral. All those in favour? Against? It is lost for the minute taker. Did you get the votes? Thank you. Move back to the agenda. There has been a series of documents provided.
I'd like to make a procedural, if I could.
Yes.
Defer the application 30 days to enable the council to consider the comments from Main Roads.
So that's okay, it's a procedural motion. So the procedural motion is deferral for 30 days. Deferral for 30
No more
days.
than 30 days.
No more than 30 days to consider the Main Roads comments, is that correct?
Yes.
That's a procedural motion moved by Eugene Colters. Is there a seconder for the procedural motion? It is seconded. Councillor Fergus Bennett. Just let me get this through. So the motion, it's a procedural motion for deferral for no more than 30 days to enable the, let me just get the clarity, enable the city of, or the the City of Nedlands, is it?
Yes.
City of Nedlands.
Or responsible authority, whichever
Yep.
is the correct terminology.
To enable response from, I'm just putting it here, City of Nedlands, City of Nedlands.
Can I just clarify, 30 days, is that going to be enough time over the day?
So that go to council?
It won't have to go to council.
Just to take it. What will happen is that the timeline that is set, and I take your point about both points that have been said, but whatever the timeline is, it's the date for us. So if there are other stages within that, that's I suppose it's concertinaed, but that a deferral date is the date for which this panel meets on the matter, not for other processes, if that clarifies your question. And I don't know if you want to make any comment. There is a shutdown, as I understand, essentially from this Friday till the 6th or something of
The department is shut from the 24th to the 2nd.
Also, that time is not extendable. If it's not met, that means you've got to come back for another meeting.
That's correct. There is no process, you're correct.
No process to adjust that.
Yes, so there's no process for a extension of a period of time outside this panel meeting. There's no authority to the presiding member to make a judgment to extend. We must meet on that.
60 days. 60 days.
So is the procedural motion?
I could vary that to 60 days.
Yeah, and if the longer you give, it doesn't mean it's going to take that long. You can get it back.
Up to 60 days, no more than 60 days.
Up to. So can I just read this out for everybody because I've got it here. The procedural motion, and I'll ask for the seconder to confirm that this is what they are seconding, that deferral for up to 60 days to enable comments / response from City of Nedlands / RA, responsible authority, I should say, to consider the main road comments, to enable, to provide, to consider and provide comments. So I need to get this absolutely correct before we move from this juncture. Okay, the language or the minute take, I have it written here. I'll be able to provide it very clearly to you. The procedural motion is deferral for a period of up to 60 days to enable the City of Nedlands / responsible authority to consider and provide comments on the main roads response dated 18th of December 2024. Is that, I'm trying to be very specific because this is an instruction to both the officers and it is also clarity for applicant. Is that what you are moving as a procedural motion? Is the seconder seconding what I've just read out as the procedural motion? Councillor Fergus-Bennett, were you clear about what I read out?
Yes, I was listening.
Thank you. Okay, we have a procedural motion in accordance with the standing orders. Only the mover can essentially speak for it, and then we will go immediately to a vote. Do you see any comment? You've got 2 minutes, I think.
Yes. The reason for it is not to reassess the application in its entirety. The application is well supported by council, by the community, by Main Roads, in fact. This is not a a move to go and reassess the parking provision. It's not to assess the detail of a lot of the Main Roads Department requirements. A number of those have been already agreed to, that the council staff have already said that they're happy to remove. There are just a few individual items in that second letter that Main Roads have put forward, and it will clarify that. The application has already been extensively canvassed through the community. There was a public consultation period, and I think the community has had the opportunity. It wasn't a groundswell of objection to this application. The plans, the supporting documentation was all provided. And if the community was that worried, they should have been able to go and have a look at all of that information. So I think that it's just really there to allow the staff to have a look at it, and if required, there are some technical issues in that the council staff requires to consider that Main Roads have put forward, then maybe that council could support the staff with some additional technical support. But this is, I reiterate, Main Roads supports this development. There are some issues that they've got, and I think that they've overstepped their mark in some of the conditions that they've required. They're talking about amalgamating site. They're talking about other issues which I don't think should really be the remit of Main Roads. So with that being the case, I put the motion.
Thank you.
Question, if I may. Can I?
You were in debate, but I'll hear it, given this is quite complex.
The proponent just said that the wording, the only conditions that would be looked at are the main roads conditions.
Correct.
So I'm not understanding when this comes back, all of those conditions that were negotiated on the floor to be taken on, will they just come back as they are now, or are they going to be looked at?
So I'll respond in this way. A RA will need to be provided. The substance of the deferral that's been put on the table is about the Main Roads response. The matters that are included in the RA are essentially matters for city officers to prepare and provide. So I can't comment about whether, in the context of some of the matters that have been raised today, they will provide any response in that RA. We're not instructing it. They will be required.
So any of those things they said were redundant.
They may.
Addressed.
They may, but it's not for us to. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sorry to explain it that way. Thank you for your comments. We are going to the vote on procedural motion. All those in favour? Against? Is carried 3-2. Does the minute taker has the minute taker got the vote? Yes. Thank you. Did the applicant hear it will be put on the website as well, the actual language. It is for the minute taker 11:08 a.m. and we are now I will move at this juncture for an adjournment, so we can have a quick comfort break. Is there a seconder? Second, John Syme. All those in favour? Carried, and we're having a short break while we change. Thank you.
Thank you.
So
Hi, it's Ashley at the DAP Secretariat. Is Councillor Dudek and Councillor Misdale online and ready to commence that?
Yep.
thank you. And I'm just confirming item 3.1, we've got Alan Stewart here, yes. 3.2, Clinton Long.
Yes.
Thank you. Doug Harmon.
It was a written submission.
I beg your pardon, thank you. Ben Doyle. Yes. Mandy. Sorry, how do you pronounce?
Low.
Lur. Thank you.
She is online. She's not. Yeah.
Councillors are both online, ready to go.
I'll give Suzanne a call.
Sorry, no, I'm here. Can you
Hi,
hear me?
yes, I can. How are you both today?
Good, thank you. How are you?
Excellent, thank you. It is 11:14. Are both of you ready to start?
Yes.
Okay, for the minute taker, we are resuming the meeting. It is 11:14 a.m. and we have changed membership. We have 2 items in relation to Part C, and I'm welcoming Councillor Migdale and Councillor Dudek, is the local government members from the City of Stirling, to the panel. Members, before we go for due consideration, I want to ask the question. I know there's been some time between the previous matter, Part B. We did receive material today at approximately 9 o'clock. For some of you, you would have received it at it would have been electronic. Have you received material today at 9 a.m. or thereabouts electronically? It is information from City of Stirling regarding Flora Terrace. It is for item 3.2. So my 2 questions are, have you received it and have you had sufficient time to read the material before we go to declaration of due consideration? And if not, we will just adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to enable you to digest that late material that was received today.
Is this the response to the amended conditions?
Yes.
Yeah, I've considered it. I've had time.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne Migdale, have you received this additional material and have you had time to digest it, or do you need further time before we go to due consideration? So you're on mute, I can't hear you. Oh, hang on. I can't hear you. Could I?
Try and unmute her.
We're going to try at our end, Councillor Suzanne.
Yeah, it was your end. Sorry, I couldn't do it. You
That's
overrode.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, we can
so
hear
I
you
have
now.
received it and I have duly considered it. Thank you.
Thank you. We will officially then go to declaration of due consideration, and that includes the material for both item 1.3.1 and 3.2 that we are dealing with at this juncture, and includes for the minute taker the material that was received this morning. All those, could you have a show of hands for due consideration? That is unanimous for the minute taker. Members, are there any disclosures of interest? And that would go first to both councillors. Was either of these matters considered by council? There's a standing declaration in relation to consideration by council. Do either of you have an interest disclosure in relation to item 3.1 and or 3.2?
No.
Are there any other declarations of interest in relation to either of these items from panel members? That is nil for the minute taker. We will now move through the items in the order in which they appear in the agenda. The first matter, item 3.1, is lot 6308 Main Street, Balcatta, childcare premise, and we have one presenter. We will move to our presenter, Mr. Alan Stewart. As you are probably already aware, you have been to these meetings previously. In accordance with the DAP Standing Orders 2024 Clause 4.8.2, your presentation is limited to 3 minutes. As you have seen, the members have indicated they have considered all material provided, and I encourage you to focus on the key matters you wish, and then we will go to questions from panel members. Over to yourself.
Thank you, presiding member. Good morning, everyone. Look, I can be quite brief today. I think we're very happy with the officer's favourable recommendation. There was only one condition in there, which I flagged in my invitation, which was condition 14, it's probably better if it refers to our operational management plan, not our planning statement. That's the reason we do the operational management plan, so you can follow that through a condition. That's the only change to conditions. This is a pretty good site for childcare premises. I've worked on many of these. Main Street's an urban corridor, and that's seen as a suitable location under the city's local planning policy for childcare premises. So we're consistent with the policy there. As usual, this application is supported by acoustic assessment and traffic impact statement. In terms of acoustics, all of the recommended noise mitigation measures will be incorporated into the design and operation of the premises, and the traffic statement does not raise any concerns about traffic safety or movements. It's a single-storey facility on a 2,000 square metre property, so it's nice we have a bit more land here to play with to mitigate any impacts of neighbours, such as overlooking, overshadowing, etc. So there's no concerns there, and we have some really nice, generous, deep soil landscaping areas. In terms of car parking, there is a shortfall when measured against the city's policy, but we've taken the same approach we have to all of the 15 or so childcare centres that have been considered and approved by the DAPs over the last few years. That approach is based on traffic modelling. In this case, we have 9 car bays set aside for customers, based on our usual formula of each of them managing quite easily 6 drop-offs per hour. And then we have a further 11 car bays set aside for staff. Those 9 customer bays become available for the staff outside of the peak times. And using that approach, we end up with a number in the order of 1 car bay for every 4.7 places, which is more generous than the recommended rate under the department's draft position statement. It's a model that we know works. Happy to take some further questions on that. We also have the Acrod Bay and the turnaround bay as well in this car park. It's a nicely designed scheme. It's been through design review panel. We've picked up on most of their comments, and I think there's a couple of conditions that require us just to tidy up a few elements of the design, but nothing significant. So thank you very much, and we look forward to your support.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions to this presenter? Thank you. We now move to officers. Oh, sorry, Councillor Suzanne Migdale.
No, sorry.
We now move to officers. Officers, would you like to provide comments in relation to this item?
Located at 308 Main Street, Balcatta. The city acknowledges the applicant's ability to work collaboratively throughout the process. The proposal is for a single-storey childcare premise with capacity for 94 students and 19 staff. The development contains a provision for 21 car bays and a designated turning bay to allow vehicles to enter and exit in forward gear, and includes the retention of 6 trees and planting of additional 24 trees on site. The site is affected by approximately a 5-metre road widening along Main Street. The proposal is considered consistent with the prevailing planning framework, and the development has been appropriately designed to help mitigate any adverse impacts to the surrounding area. The city has reviewed the applicant's comments relating to the proposed conditions, and should the panel see fit to alter condition 14 to refer to the operational management plan, the city would provide no objection to this.
Yeah.
Happy to answer any questions if needed.
Thank you. Members, are there any questions to city officers?
No.
Thank you. If there are no questions to city officers, I move to back to the agenda. The recommendation is at the beginning of the agenda, and there is a question raised through the applicant in relation to condition 14. Is there a mover of the RA recommendation? It is moved, Member Suzanne Migdale. Is there a seconder for this item? It is seconded, Michael Dudek, Member Michael Dudek. Member Suzanne Migdale, could I have clarification, please, from you? The motion that you move, was that inclusive or not of any change to condition 14? Just want to clarify whether you are moving the recommendation as it appears in the RA.
I'm moving the recommendation with the amendment of the wording to operational management plan.
Thank you for the minute taker. Was that clear in terms of what was being moved? Thank you. I'll move now to the mover. Would you like to speak on the item?
Thank you, Chair, presiding member. I don't have much to say. This is an excellent example of highest and best use of this land. I cannot foresee any issues. I do acknowledge the public's feedback and concerns, though in this instance, I do believe that this development ticks all boxes. It's an excellent example of a design that the city requires, and a use of land in the right space. I can't fault it. Happy to support it today. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
No, nothing further.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the motion?
I'll speak to it. Yes, look, I just reiterate what Councillor McDowell said. From a planning point of view, the proposal satisfies the planning framework. It's been supported by the Department of Planning and their policies. The RAR assessment supports it. The land use is permissible. Development criteria on building height, street setbacks, side and rear setbacks, the locational characteristics on a Class 2 corridor road, and it's in scale with the surrounding residential development. The discretion sought on parking has been justified through the transport impact statement, and other issues such as waste management have been addressed. The design review panel was supportive of it, and therefore I'm supporting the application and supporting the change to condition 4.
Thank you. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Yes, Mr. John Simon.
Look, very briefly, nothing much new to add to that. Just to reinforce that this is a particularly nicely designed development. It meets all the framework very easily. It doesn't push any boundaries at all. Minor discretion on parking. I think it's a very easy one to approve. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you. I will make only a few comments. I concur that it is consistent and satisfies the planning framework, including the use permissibility. I am pleased to see that the development is appropriate and has been supported in terms of both design, scale and locational considerations. And as has been already mentioned, I think in this instance, based on the material that we've provided, the discretion on parking is supported. Those are my comments. I move back to the mover for right of reply and close of debate.
Thank you. I will just make one additional comment, and that is to say that parallel to this location, close by, JDAP approved a very similar development for the purpose of childcare, and the local residents did raise parking and traffic as an issue. And that development was built several years ago now, and I have never seen the car park full, never, not once. So I'm very comfortable to support this today. Thank you.
Thank you. The close of debate has occurred. We are now going to the vote. All those in favour? It is carried unanimously for the minute taker. Thank you. We will now move to item 3.2, lot 15, number 118, Flora Terrace in Beach. Thank you. A mixed use development. We have a number of presentations. The first is a written document. We've already received that. We now go to the first verbal presentation. Mr. Clinton Long, if you'd like to come forward.
Thank you, presiding member. Excuse me. Firstly, I'd like to say beautiful building. I think there's the architects here. It's very attractive. If it was 3-storey, if it was 1-to-1 plot ratio, really, I don't see that there be any further comment. It'd be very acceptable. Everybody I've spoken to, and I'm talking about 55 people that I have proxy vote for, they've actually all agreed that increasing the plot ratio by 67%, which is nearly 1,000 metres,
is inappropriate in this area. Also an additional 2 stories. If we go back to 2017, we've got a report from Charlie Architects. It's noted that place initiatives have placed low-scale built form, mixed 2 to 3 stories, and talks about the lack of car parking. There's 128 car bay shortfall in the area. It's absolutely known that there is congestion in the area. The City of Stirling also promoted another report by KCTT Traffic Management. Traffic Management tried to mitigate some of the issues, and there's time parking now. So congestion is obvious, it's there. And we have now another report, not by the City of Stirling, it's a traffic impact statement. And this is what it says. The predicted traffic increase from the development is expected to be minimal. There's 49 car bays there, 10 for commercial. And in the same summary, it's saying the traffic management system requires to facilitate inbound and outbound traffic and requires a traffic light for single lane in and out of the building. Well, that's for sure is congestion. You've got 2 days of collection from the waste management plan, 2 days instead of 1. If you take 54 bedrooms, which are in the plan, and instead 32 by ratio, the 32, you'd only need 1 collection. There's more congestion. You times that by how many buildings we're going to get in Flora Terrace. If you make this precedent allowable, we're going to have a lot more congestion. So really, when this traffic impact statement is written, the conclusion is written before the content. So really, of what value is this traffic impact statement? It gives the answer before the content. So I see really that we haven't been listened to local people. City of Stirling does a report. It's very reasonable. There's things to be said. Who made this traffic impact statement? The developer, of course. It has no value. It's a conflict of interest. I move that we do not accept the additional plot ratio. We do not accept the additional stories. We do accept the beautification of Flora Terrace, the development. We're not anti-development. We absolutely support that. Thank you.
Thank you. Panel members, are there any questions to this presenter? Thank you. There are no questions at this juncture. Panel members, as you are aware, you can come back and ask questions of presenters at any juncture before we go to debate on the motion. Thank you for your presentation.
I've got one more thing I'd like to quickly say, if you don't mind. I do represent 55 people. There are errors in the planning department report. For example, car parking is taken as location A, which requires a train station next door, or it needs frequent buses 15 minutes apart for 2 hours morning and afternoon and on business days. That is not the case. I've got the bus schedule. It doesn't do that. It's actually incorrect. The traffic impact statement has it right. The City of Stirling has it wrong. There will be other anomalies and other things to discuss, but we simply have not had a voice on this one. It's being pushed through by the City of Stirling very zealously, and we absolutely are against it. Please do not support it, City of Stirling.
Thank you for your comments. As indicated earlier, there will be an opportunity for comments from city officers for panel to also take into consideration. Thank you very much for your comments. There are no questions at this juncture from panel members. So we will immediately move to our next presenter. We have listed, although I do acknowledge you may wish to change that listing around, have listed Mandy Lure and then Ben Doyle. Are both of you coming forward, and are you wishing to speak in the order that I have here?
I'll sit up with Mandy. We may just pull this with your permission, as was done with the previous applicants.
Sorry, you're saying joint?
Joint.
Within the six. So as we did previously, you both have 3 minutes. You've been here before. You understand the provisions within the DAP standing orders. There will be a 6-minute time slot, which accounts for the 2 presentations at 3 minutes each. And I will hand over to yourselves. As indicated earlier today, we have support through the DAP Secretariat, who will be assisting me in terms of the time frames. Over to yourself, Ben. I understand you're starting. Is that correct?
Sure, I'll start.
Up to yourself.
That's fine. No, let's keep it quick. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. We're pleased for a recommendation of approval. I'd like to thank the city's officers for their diligent assessment, especially Michael Italiano, who was the assessing officer on this one. I'm conscious of time. I'll just respond to a couple of things raised in the deputations. Mr. Harmon raised an issue regarding the width of the driveway, saying it was 4 metres, 3.5 metres, not 4 metres as per the report. When that was raised, we went back and checked our modelling and confirmed that the overshadowing modelling and the setbacks have been assessed in accordance with the feature survey, which demonstrated that that driveway is 3.4 metres wide. So all the overshadowing modelling that we've done is based on a 3.4 metre wide driveway. So it is a conservative estimate, and it shows that it's deemed to comply, and in fact also would be a lesser impact than a deemed to comply 3-storey building on our site. The visual privacy was raised in a submission, confirming that all visual privacy is deemed to comply or has been conditioned to be deemed to comply. So that's fine. With regards to the parking traffic, the parking provision for the non-residential is 1.5 times the maximum recommended by the new planning manual. And the Hames-Charlie report that was referenced, when it talks about shortfall parking, that is a shortfall measured against the old City of Stirling policy. It's not a shortfall in reality. It's simply saying that previous parking dispensation has been provided for other developments there, which we don't dispute. This has been through 3 design reviews. Read the design. The panel believes the applicant for a high-quality proposal, which will set a positive benchmark for development in this North precinct. The project carefully balances bulk, scale, and amenity of its neighbours to create a considered medium-density outcome for this site, which sits comfortably within its planning context. The proposal has continued to improve since DRP1, and aside some minor but important considerations, the panel supports the proposal. We also met with the officers and worked through the public submissions, and that's all now been addressed. This is a careful, considered development that is very respectful of its neighbours. We would like you to support it. It replaces an old typology that contains nothing. I won't go through the conditions that have been requested to be modified. I'd be pleased to answer any questions on those, but I'm conscious that my 3 minutes has 10 seconds left. I'll hand over to me.
Thank you.
Okay, good morning, members of panel. Thank you for the opportunities to present our proposal. Our proposal is located at the Flora local town centre. This vibrant neighbourhood offers excellent amenities and is in close proximity to the beach, making the site an ideal location for an increasing density while maintaining a design that is sympathetic to its surrounding. Being a good neighbour has been crucial to this proposal. This is the only site on the west side of Flora Terrace that is part of the local centre and is surrounded by an R50 site to the north and an R20 site to the south. The build form needed to serve as a transition response, not only to the, we're just going to check.
Guys.
That's okay. You might want to just check that everyone's on. We're just holding for the presenter. We'll just check if everyone that's not speaking, we're on mute. Great. Over to yourself. If you'd like to continue your presentation, please.
Let's start now this slide again. The build form needed to serve as a transitional response, not only to the adjacent properties, but also to the street while embracing a town centre style development. The proposal demonstrates that it's possible to pursue additional height while achieving a positive outcome. The proposed build form results in overshadowing that offers a slight improvement over a 3-storey development. A stepped nest to the south has been incorporated to provide a more gradual transition to the adjacent properties. This approach ensures that the amenities of our neighbours is respected and preserved. Privacy and potential overlooking has been carefully considered for both the future residents and those living to the south, north and south. Materials and tones has been carefully considered to complement the beach character of the local streets. Our design response aims to enhance this texture, delivering a building that is positively contribute to the overall fabric of the local community. Our proposal carefully considers the streetscape, harmonizing with the existing build form to the north and south, while making a positive contribution to the street. The additional street setback is the additional height is set back from the street, effectively reducing the perception of the public. As discussed with the DRP, this proposal is a good example of how additional heights can be achieved while enhancing the expected planning outcomes. Solar access studies and multiple overshadowing diagrams clearly demonstrate the positive outcome of the proposal build form. This proposal ensures that no detrimental impact will be caused to the surroundings. In fact, the proposed scheme represents an improvement, ensuring full solar access to the solar panel of adjacent properties. Respecting our neighbor, our amenity has been a key focus throughout our design. Similarly to the north, the proposed build form aligns with the existing 3-story commercial properties. The podium continues to the streetscape, while with an added setback to the upper floors. This proposal seeks to enhance the streetscape and celebrate the beach character of the local community. This proposal strikes a perfect balance between the need for housing opportunities and the ongoing urban changes presented to the local community. Considering the strengths of the proposal and the full support of the design review panel, we kindly request the panel to support the officer's recommendation and approve this development application. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Panel members, are there any questions to these two presenters?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Yes.
Just specifically referencing the written submission by Doug Harmon. He's advised that the balconies on 3 of the floors will directly look into the bedroom of his 6-year-old granddaughter. I'm not 100% sure what side of the development he's on, as his address has been blurred, but I'm just wondering what parts of the design address these concerns.
There's a question to the applicant. Would you like to provide a comment?
Certainly. Responding to that, so the submission comes from the dwelling at the front of the property to the south. So that is adjacent to the office tenancy, or adjacent to the office tenancy. So obviously at ground level, there are no openings facing towards the southern property. We also, as you'll see from the plans, it is our driveway also that is on the southern side of our site. So in terms of the openings looking towards that site, there are bedrooms on the upper levels of the development. At level 1, the bedroom facing south is greater than the 4.5 metre cone of vision that is deemed to comply. Bear in mind that there is also then the 3.5 metre driveway of the southern property, then the adjoining dwellings boundary fence. As you go further up, the bedrooms, our building steps back away from the southern boundary, so that then goes to 5.74 metres from the southern boundary, so some 8.5 metres, 9 metres from the property to the south, and then at the 4th floor, the balcony is, what is the setback there? It's 7.6 metres from the boundary, and then again obviously the 3.5 metre driveway. So all of those south-facing openings achieve the deemed to comply criteria of the R codes.
Thank you. Before we move forward, as that has a similar response. Can we take a response from city officers only on this specific aspect? I'm assuming that the member will be asking a similar question to officers, and it is appropriate at this juncture. We have both comments in relation to that subject matter from city officers as well. Could you respond? Could you provide a comment specifically on the question about that's been just asked by the member?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. The reference to the potential overlooking relates to the property to the south. As discussed by the applicant, the setbacks address the relevant acceptable outcomes of the apartment codes, and there's no issues from the city in terms of any adverse overlooking. Thank you.
Thank you for your response. Member Michael Dudek, would you like to continue with your questions?
Yeah, I've got about 3 more. Just on light pollution, also referencing the submission by Doug Harmon, mentions he's concerned about light pollution spilling onto his property. I imagine it's a concern that other residents will have too. I'm just wondering why you've sought to have condition 13 amended and remove the requirement that outdoor lighting must not spill onto any adjacent properties. Wondering if I could have a comment on that.
Certainly. The reason for the suggested modification to the condition is to provide certainty. So the condition requires outside lighting to comply with the Australian standard, AS 4282, named the control of the obtrusive effects of outdoor lighting. So the condition requires that all lighting be designed and installed in accordance with that Australian standard. We have no problem with complying with that Australian standard. What the condition does, though, is then adds a further criterion which says, and must not spill into any adjacent premises. Now, it doesn't give any guidance as to how that is measured, how that is considered, what that spill might entail, light is visible from various locations. So what we're suggesting is that compliance with the Australian standard for the installation, design and installation, is what we should be achieving. That's measurable. We can see that it complies, and we will comply with that. When you introduce a subjective, unspecified criterion, it opens the door to subjective assessments and questions about whether or not the lighting spills or does not spill into the adjoining property.
Just on that one, could we have the same as we've had on the earlier question? Could I have a response from city officers? This does deal with condition 13. Applicant has requested a modification. You've heard applicant comment. Can the city provide a comment in the context of the request or the question by the member?
Through the chair, similarly, we reviewed the recommended modifications to the condition setting by the applicant and agree that the removal of those words is acceptable in the context of that condition setting. The condition as applied would allow the city to ensure that the lighting is controlled and does not have an adverse impact on adjoining properties. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Presiding Member, if I can just expand, just briefly on my answer, it was that I would say that if the lighting is installed in accordance with the Australian standard, it would be our expectation that it will not spill into the adjoining property.
Thank you. Member, do you have any further questions at this juncture?
Yeah, just 2 more. I just wonder how advanced the actual plans are of the apartment. I referenced the design of apartment 203, which is on page 569 of the PDF, or page 47 of item 3.2 in the agenda. Just wondering how the bloke in the middle bedroom goes to the toilet at night, because it doesn't seem like there's any access to the toilet apart from walking through one of the other 2 bedrooms to access one in the dwelling. Not too sure if I can get a comment on that.
It's 203. He's referring to unit 203, which is at the rear. We're on. Let me respond to that.
There is actually probably not quite showing on the drawing because it's actually a sliding dual door. This bathroom to the second bedroom actually also have a second sliding door to open to the corridor. Probably wasn't showing to properly due to the hedge of the drawing.
Did the member hear what was referred to? The comment was that particular amenities has two access ways, one directly from the bedroom and one that is a sliding door entering into the corridor, which provides access for others.
No worries, I'll take that. My final concern is somewhat opposite to that, in that level 4, which is a 4-bedroom, 4-bathroom dwelling. It's almost self-contained units in themselves with multiple key access. And just saying, you could theoretically have 8 people living in this unit with 8 cars, 4 couples. Are we sure that the current parking provision is enough to accommodate for this development? Because Flora Terrace is almost certainly can't accommodate any extra cars parked on the road.
Can the applicant provide a response on the question, please, based on the design material and its reference to level 4?
My understanding is this apartment actually has like 3-4 car bays allocated.
Sorry, could you just repeat that?
My understanding is that this apartment actually has like a minimum of 3 car bays allocated for this apartment. And the intention for those is actually not a lockable door. They actually just like some privacy door, because like people buying the whole penthouse is only one strata. And they like to have like split the house into multiple zones rather than multiple dwelling and rent it out. This is not going to happen. That will be in the bylaws. We'll actually say something about that.
Thank you.
To expand on that, a dwelling cannot be occupied by more than 6 people who do not comprise a single family. So the interpretation would be that this would be occupied by a single family. It could not, in terms of the approval, be occupied by more than 6 people who are not part of a single family. In terms of the parking, under the R codes, this development for residential parking would require a minimum 24 bays and a maximum 43 bays. We're proposing 38 bays. So the parking is deemed to comply, and we would expect it to be sufficient for the use.
Thank you. Does the member have any further questions?
No further questions for now.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from?
Can I make a quick comment?
No, you can't. It's only question time from the panel members. Member Suzanne Migdale. Sorry, could you just, we'll just check, getting you sorted on the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sorry.
My question is, do all residents have roof access, or is that only for the top floor apartment? I can't really tell.
There's no amenities provided on the roof for communal residents. Which access?
I think she's referring to the long balcony, or I'm assuming it's a long balcony on level 4.
Yes, no, that's.
No, I'm referring to the what I see as the roof. So am I right in saying that the stairs do go up to the roof from level 4?
The roof is just the solar array, air conditioner compressors and the lift overrun. So
okay.
Won't need to access that. I would expect that would just be maintenance access.
Okay, no problem. Thank you.
Any further questions from panel members at this juncture? If not, we will go to city officers. City officers, if you would like to provide some response or comments on the proposal, and you are able to provide response to any matters, and you can include in that response your comments that was provided through yourselves earlier today. Over to yourselves.
Thank you through the chair. The city would like to take this opportunity to thank today's presenters for their time. In relation to the proposed development, the city would like to thank the applicant for engaging early with the city through the pre-development application process and DRP to refine the proposal and for working collaboratively with the city. The application is for a 5-storey development which incorporates an office tenancy at ground level and 20 apartments. The proposed development is located within an area designated as the Flora Terrace Local Centre, which comprises a variety of residential and commercial land uses and built form typologies, with existing heights between 1 to 4 stories. Though the development represents a departure from the building height and plot ratio provisions of the city's planning framework, the city's assessment concludes the height, bulk and scale of the proposed development is appropriate and has been carefully designed to mitigate any adverse impacts to adjoining properties. The proposed development provides for high quality landscaping with deep soil areas at ground level and on structure, including the planting of 16 new trees. Significant landscaping and tree planting, particularly along the side and rear boundaries, assists with transitions to lower density residential properties. The proposed development is of high quality and is appropriate within its context. The proposed development has addressed all relevant considerations and is supported subject to the recommended condition setting. And then working through the submission the city provided late yesterday, and apologies for that late notice. In working through the modifications submitted by the applicant, the city has undertaken a review of the requested modifications with the following comments provided. The following conditions have been modified in accordance with the applicant's request, conditions 4D, 4E and 13. And in terms of retained conditions, the following conditions have not been modified or deleted in accordance with the applicant's request. Conditions 16, 21 and 33. In dealing with the specifics of the conditions, condition 16 is recommended for attention, as the purpose of this condition is to ensure the development complies with Environmental Protection Noise Regulations 1997 and the measures and recommendations of the submitted acoustic report are appropriate. The applicant's presentation identifies this condition has been removed by the Development Assessment Panel on previous applications. However, no specific development applications have been referenced for consideration. As such, the city is unable to provide comment in relation to this matter. Condition 1, the modification of condition 21 to remove reference to motorcycle and scooter bays is not supported by the city. Element 3.9, car and bicycle parking of the Residential Design Codes Volume 2, provides for visitor parking to be clearly signed to provide for clear navigation directional signage. The visitor parking signage can be designed to accommodate all transport modes without being excessive or resulting in visual clutter. Lastly, the applicant's submission identified the modification of condition 33 to remove reference to the requirement for the universal design features of the silver level requirements of the livable housing guidelines to be installed and be operational prior to occupation of the development, which is not supported. Element 4.9, universal design of the Residential Design Codes, Volume 2 apartments, requires that the development achieves the silver level requirements of the livable housing guidelines to provide for dwellings with universal design features to provide for people living with disabilities, mobility, and or to facilitate ageing in place. These universal features are to be installed by the developer rather than future occupants. This condition has been typically recommended by the city and applied by the Development Assessment Panel for applications of this nature, including but not limited to number 2 and 8 Adair Parade, which was for a 5-story mixed-use development, Karrinyup West, which related to a 24 and 14-story mixed-use development, and a 6-story development on Chester Ave. So these are recent applications where the condition was imposed, recommended by the city and imposed by the DAP. Thank you.
Thank you. Could I have clarification, please, both applicant and city? Your documents that I've got in front of me, material that was provided by the city today, refers to applicant requested modifications 4D, 4E, 13, 21, 33 and deletion of condition 16. Your response refers to 4C. I want to be clear about what we're all talking about.
Yeah.
Through the chair, apologies, that should have 4D. I did address that in the submission, but I should have advised that was a correction.
That's okay. Just wanted to make sure I'm clear about what all the parties are saying. Thank you for that. Members, are there questions to the city officers at this juncture? I have a question to city officers. I know you have covered off in the RA. I'd like you just to speak through a little bit, two matters I'd like you to talk about. They were raised in the presentation today. One is form and scale, and I note the siting of the building providing greater setback toward the residential component. Could you speak about that aspect? And the second, can you provide a response in relation to the traffic and congestion in the area?
Through the chair, thank you for the question. In regards to the height of the development, the city's planning framework identifies provisions for a base height of 3 stories or 12 metres with performance criteria applicable to go above these heights. The development has provided for a 3-storey podium effectively to floor a terrace, which responds to the existing development or existing and future development context with 3 stories permitted along Flora Terrace. The development has been designed in a manner where height also, the 3-storey component moves towards the northern boundary, which responds to the existing 3-storey development, which has a density coding of R50. And then the development steps internally with the bulk aligned in the centre of the site with increased setbacks and transitions to provide relief and separation to the northern, western and southern boundaries. This separation has been carefully designed to mitigate any adverse impacts in terms of overlooking and additional terms of overshadowing where the development satisfies the relevant overshadowing provisions, particularly to the south. In regards to the traffic matters, the traffic impact assessment, transport impact statement submitted by the applicant has been reviewed by the city. The traffic generated is minimal in the context of the development and can be supported within the existing road network. I'll throw to our traffic engineer, Russell, for any additional comments regarding that.
Thank you.
Just looking at the data provided and the traffic impact statement, it meets all relevant standards. The trip generation numbers, industry standard, and it comes out 12 trips an hour. So it's basically during those peak hours, it's an extra car on the road every 5 minutes, which is fairly negligible. And Flora Terrace currently has 2,300 vehicles a day. The extra 125 a day is much less than the 10% that we need a transport impact assessment for. And as I say, the negligible traffic impacts according to this development.
Thank you. Do you have any comments in relation to the concerns that were raised about the design and the use of a traffic light system?
Look, the traffic's, because the traffic's low, the traffic light system, we wouldn't expect there to be any problems. The traffic impact statement addresses those concerns, and yeah, we don't have any concerns with that.
In addition to those comments, the city did widen the crossover in order to allow, as per the conditions of approval, to allow for a vehicle to wait in the crossover while another vehicle was coming out. That's just to ensure that to mitigate that potential conflict. The traffic light system considered reasonable and appropriate in similar developments to mitigate any potential conflicts.
Thank you. Are there any further comments you wish to make at this juncture, officers? I move back to the members. Is there any further questions from members to city officers? You also can ask questions of the applicant or presenters. If there are no further questions, we move to the agenda. As is the DAP standing orders, there is a recommendation at the beginning of the RA. I will now call for a mover of the RA recommendation as written. Is there a mover? It is moved. Member Suzanne Migdale. Is there a seconder?
Is that what was arrived?
No, what's actually being moved is the recommendation at the beginning of the RA, not the modifications. That's what I've for. So Member Suzanne Migdale has moved it. Is there a seconder for the motion on the table?
Sorry, presiding member, yes. Just to clarify, yes. What I am moving includes the amendments to 4DE C and 13 per officer recommendation.
Thank you. That clarity has been provided. The member is moving the recommendation at the beginning of the agenda, inclusive of the modifications that were provided to us today from city officers that were supported by city officers, being condition 4D, 4E and 13.
Yes.
Inclusive of that. I'll just make a note of that. Thank you. Is there...
Sorry, numbers 4C and 4D.
4C and 4.
4C and 4D conditions. Automatic numbering is
Sorry, say that again.
It's 4C
and 4D.
What did I say?
4D and 4E.
Oh, apologies.
Probably my fault.
Can I just have clarity that from the, sorry, it's unusual, but I actually made note of that as being 4D and 4E. Can we have clarity about, applicants just said, as you've probably heard, officers, he's referring to C and D. I'm pretty sure you said D and E. Can you clarify, please?
Through the chair, yeah, that's correct. It's for D and E, and that's outlined as per the applicant's deputation. The addendum that we provided late yesterday referenced condition 4C incorrectly, so the condition should be 4D and 4E.
Yes.
Sorry, can I just get, what I'll do is actually, to make sure I'm really clear, I'm going back to the recommendation in the RA. 4C reads, amend the eastern major opening. Is that what the applicant's referring to?
Yes.
Is the city referring to that wording, or are you referring to, because E, location planters on level 0 on level 1?
It should be 4C and 4D. We're cross-referencing the applicant's deputation and then the amended modifications, which are referencing those interchangeably. In reviewing the determination or the recommended condition setting, it should be modifying condition 4C and 4D with the addition of, I think it was to the satisfaction of the city.
Both those conditions, just to clarify, for clarity on city officers, both 4C and 4D deal with screening.
Yes.
Is that correct, city officers?
Yeah, that's correct. Apologies for the...
No, I just want to be clear that we're all talking about the same thing. I appreciate you assisting me on that. So for the minute taker and for the member, it's being moved inclusive of 4C and 4D as per the
officer recommendation in bar.
Okay, so it's actually as per the applicant's modification, but it's actually incorrectly worded on this table I've got in front in terms of the lettering. So it should be C and D. For a minute taker, have you got that? C and D. Yes. Okay. Sorry, member. I'll just go back to that. So it's inclusive of 4C, 4D, and I beg your pardon, I've not taken note of your next points. 13. Thank you. Thank you, member. Is there a seconder for the motion that has been put on the table by member Suzanne McDowell? It is seconded, John Syme. Would the mover like to speak to the item?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Chair. Having reviewed the history of this application, I do support the application in its current form before us today. I think the changes that were made to the application as a result of working it through with DRP have delivered improved outcomes to it. To its credit, it includes setbacks to upper levels to reduce the bulk and scale. One could argue this delivers a more favourable outcome to the streetscape. And in this instance, I do believe it will. Overshadowing levels are satisfied, as are boundary setbacks. Implementation of privacy screening where deemed necessary has been applied. And of course, the surplus of parking provided on site of 18 residential bays is unheard of. So that is an awesome achievement. I think it's a well thought out, a handsome design, which shows great attention to detail, even so far as including a proposed skip bin site for residents. I thought that was quite unique and showed the detail of consideration. Happy to support it as is today. Thanks.
Thank you. Would the seconder like to speak to the motion?
Yes, look, this is overall a pretty well considered design. I think there is additional height and there is additional plot ratio, but generally it is above the building and it is pretty much not visible from any reasonable angle, certainly not from streetscape. So to that extent, the streetscape is well preserved. I think some of the planning in the internal planning is a bit, shall we say, idiosyncratic, but that's a choice, a design choice which is there, and it might be resolved in further detail. But generally, it fits within this general environment pretty well, I think. What I did find interesting was the way that it's set back on the southern boundary. Now, what that achieves is actually very good sun access conditions to the properties to the south, which have solar panels and so on. I think it's been well illustrated. Because of that, there is actually no measurable overshadowing impact on the southern boundary. So that's good to know. I think overall there are some, as I say, idiosyncratic elements to this, but overall it fits fairly well and should be a fairly successful development. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any speakers against the motion? Member Michael Dudek, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I will. Just due to my previously mentioned concerns regarding privacy, light pollution, and the dwelling designs impacting parking, as well as the fact that this building height is well outside of the planning framework that permits 3 stories, a height of 12 metres, I would recommend we do not support this development with its current design. I think the framework is established for a reason, and it undergoes community consultation as part of that. And the framework for a local centre clearly says 3 stories. There's no existing precedent for 5 stories here. This development would significantly alter the character of this locality in the future.
Thank you for your comments. Are there any other speakers on the motion? Yes, would you like to speak to it?
I'd speak in support of it. I think the development shows that the uses proposed are appropriate. The land use isn't mixed as required or as sought after in this location. The development control assessment, whilst it shows that discretion sought for some setbacks, they've all been performance criteria have shown that the deleterious effect on the supporting areas have been ameliorated. Overshadowing has been attended to, visual privacy has been attended to. I think that the development at 5 levels, the performance criteria, and for that shows that whilst the area talks about a 3-level design option for that location, it doesn't necessarily mandate that it's only 3 levels and that's it. And I think this development has shown how it can fit in with the adjoining resident properties. That's not to say that other developments can't seek greater height or plot ratio, but they would also have to show that they can meet the performance criteria under the residential design codes. So that said, I support the development. I think it will fit in well in the locality.
Thank you. I will speak to the motion, and my first comments in relation to the planning framework. The planning framework has a series of performance-based considerations in it, and an opportunity for the development to be configured in a way that takes into account the local context, as well as the land zoning and the planning framework. Planning framework is not an absolute, and I can appreciate that that is a difficult consideration, and that it's a due regard document that provides guidance in relation to how these matters should be addressed. From my perspective, I think the office has done an excellent job in the information contained in the RA. Found that very, very helpful. I found that the extra explanation for all variations that are where discretion is being sought for some modifications to the design in order for it to fit into the local area, very well thought out, and provided an excellent commentary from my perspective. I agree that the proposal meets a series of provisions, particularly in relation to privacy and overshadowing, and that those aspects are a technical consideration, and there's been provided a numerical number within the planning framework. As I've already indicated, those elements will provide the manner in which the planning framework considers them and determines them. And I note that pretty much any development that has a level above ground floor has potential for views from a variety of spaces that go beyond those planning provisions, but the planning has sought to create an appropriate mechanism to balance those types of considerations, and those have been put into a numerical number. So I do appreciate concerns that are raised by local community. However, I understand that the planning framework has a complex mechanism trying to balance out both community and neighbouring existing, as well as the development in the context of its local area. I think the design is a well thought out design. I'm satisfied that the design fits within the local streetscape and within the planning framework as it's written, and that the discretion is warranted. Specifically, I refer to the comments that have been provided by the RA, and I concur with those comments and the grounds for determination, the grounds for discretion. In relation to the movement on site, I would also echo the comments made by the mover today in relation to parking. I think that increase of parking on site for the overall development is a positive one, and I am comfortable that the network is appropriately designed in order to cater for the development traffic movement. I have, and also note the comments provided by the officers in relation to the design and the crossover in terms of holding on the site to facilitate movement on the site. I also acknowledge the comments provided that there's been some movement in relation to management of parking in and around the area by the city. That is the subject of and within the jurisdiction of the city. From my perspective, the proposal itself does not create such unwarranted traffic movement for me that would result this as an inappropriate development in a local context. It is appropriately zoned for this type of activity. It has a combination zoning on it, which provides for both residential and commercial, and the interaction on the street, I think, is well thought out and a good design. I am supportive of the proposal and the motion that has been put on the table. If there are no other speakers, I move back to the mover for right of reply and close of debate on the motion.
Nothing further. Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to the vote on the motion. All those in favour? Against? It is carried for the minute taker 4-1. And minute taker, you got the vote. Thank you. I move back to the agenda. There are no Form 2 applications listed in item 4. There are no SAT reconsideration applications listed in item 5. The current SAT applications are listed as Part D. I have no comments on those, and accordingly I close today's meeting at 12:16 a.m. Thank everybody for their, PM, I beg your pardon. I thank everybody for their participation. I wish everybody a safe and happy Christmas and the festive season. Thank you, everybody.
Merry Christmas, Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.